refried beans, guacamole, sour cream and onion dip, vegan queso, salsa, cilantro, jalapeños. You ready for this? Football. This is a baseball shirt for a team that I don't have any affiliation to because we live in Toronto and Brian's a Red Sox fan, but it's a sports shirt that I own, so I'm gonna wear it and we're gonna make some dip. This is a 7-layer dip. All the dips individually are delicious on their own, so I'll show you how to make each one and give you all my tips and tricks for compiling this beast. The base layer, refried beans, make them in advance. A splash of oil, a clove of minced garlic, saute 2 minutes until fragrant, add 2 cups pinto beans or black beans, a teaspoon chili powder, half a teaspoon ground cumin, a 1/4 teaspoon salt, and half a cup to 1 cup of broth, reserved bean water or fresh water. Bring to a simmer, cook for 5 minutes until warmed through, then mash or blend. For this 7-layer dip, I prefer to puree these refried beans for a smooth texture on the base layer. Most refried bean recipes add onion when the garlic is sauteed. I keep it out of this recipe because there's so many flavors and textures going on that I like to let the flavor of the bean shine through. But totally add it in if you like. And when you go to puree or mash your beans, that's where you can change the texture a bit. So if they seem too dry, just add in more liquid. And if they're too wet, just cook the beans longer. And on that note, a tip for this 7-layer dip, make sure your refried bean layer isn't too dry. It'll be hard to smoothly drag a chip through the dip if the bottom layer is too firm. So I like to puree the refried beans and keep them a little softer. Layer 2, an easy guacamole, best mashed right before adding it to the dip, so hold off on preparing this one. Layer 3, a 5-minute tofu sour cream and onion dip, best made in advance. Add 220 grams extra firm and pressed tofu to a blender. Splash in 2 tablespoons lemon juice, 1 teaspoon apple cider vinegar, 2 teaspoons onion powder, a 1/4 teaspoon garlic powder, 1½ teaspoons nutritional yeast, 1/4 teaspoon cane sugar, half a teaspoon salt, and 1/8 teaspoon black pepper. Add up to a 1/4 cup of fresh water, but only add as much as you need to blend the dip until smooth. So in 5 minutes, we essentially made a sour cream out of tofu and then added in some extra seasonings to make a sour cream and onion flavor. And I prefer to make this one in advance because you can, and it does firm up a little bit in the fridge, which makes it easier to spread across the guacamole without it kind of mixing into the avocado. And that brings us to layer 4, our beloved extra speedy queso. This 15-minute cheesy sauce can be made in advance, and we walk you through the simple process of making this one in our queso taco mac and cheese video. It's just butter, flour, milk, some seasonings, a few minutes to thicken, and you have the perfect cheesy dip or drizzle. I make this queso in advance, and there's garlic and chili pepper in there, so if you don't want those little clumps, then you can blend it smooth. But because it's in a layer and covered by other things, I don't bother. And this dip will thicken a bit in the fridge, so just before I add it to the rest of the dip, I reheat it quickly and sometimes add a bit of extra milk, and that will thin it out again and make it a little easier to spread across the other layers. And I always make a double batch because that way I make sure I have enough of the cheesy layer, and we always find a use for leftover queso, so why not? Layer 5, salsa. Salsa is the problem child of this dip. So you know that I love making as much as I can from scratch. It's often thriftier, I know exactly what's going in it, but homemade salsas let out a lot of excess water. Even when I tried straining that excess water, it changes the texture of the salsa and it was still releasing water into the dip. So for convenience, and since this is a dip meant to serve to guests, I suggest going with a store-bought salsa. And that can often be thriftier depending on the season. So it still will release liquid into the dip, but not as much. And since I spent some time creating a salsa, I do have the directions for an easy homemade salsa in the notes section of the recipe card. And whichever version you choose, homemade or store-bought, I do suggest adding the salsa right before you serve. Is it game time? 7-layer dip time? I think we're ready, except for the guacamole. Let's mash that up. To make guacamole, you need to be able to mash the avocados, so they need to be ripe. A ripe avocado will be darker in color, closer to black than bright green, and you can lightly press into the top and squish the fruit. Couple of handy tips. If your avocados are not quite ripe enough, store them next to your bananas or put them in a paper bag with a banana. Bananas release a hormone that speeds up the ripening process of the avocado. Apples can do the same thing. And if you have the opposite problem, if your avocados are getting too dark and too ripe, put them in the fridge. The cold will slow down the ripening of the avocado and it will stay well in your fridge for another couple of days. To remove the pit, you can press on the back of the avocado or carefully strike the pit with a knife, twist and pull. Scoop out the flesh, add it to a bowl or mortar and pestle, splash in 2 teaspoons lime juice, and 1/8 teaspoon salt, and 1/4 teaspoon garlic powder. Mash until combined. Get your game face on, let's layer this up. Protein, tons of color, full of flavor, easy to scoop. We did good. This vegan 7-layer party dip serves 8 or more and costs us just over $13 if we make a single batch of our queso and just over $15 if we double our cheesy sauce. Are you ready for this breakdown? Our refried beans cost us 73 cents using beans we've cooked from scratch and $1.96 using canned beans. Guacamole, $3.67. Our tofu sour cream and onion dip, $1.88. Queso, $2 or $4 if we double it. Homemade or store-bought salsa, around $3, and a few cents for cilantro and jalapeños. So click that link below for this vegan 7-layer party dip. Get ready for the Super Bowl and tackle that subscribe button if you enjoyed this episode. We have a new video for you every Sunday at 5 p.m. and next Sunday is our popular and personal favorite post-workout snack, our chickpea cookie dough protein bars. Enjoy the Super Bowl, enjoy the dip, and we'll see you next week.
Let's go Blue Jays. Boom, 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 boom.